This was a tough week for the defendant. There was gripping, dramatic testimony from the woman at the center of the hush money plot. Of all the witnesses we've seen, she has become the most famous through her encounter with Trump. And there were also testimony and key days of testimony from witnesses who were in Trump's orbit, who could speak about what she said and corroborate some of the financials for the jury. We have more on that as well tonight. But prosecutors have been laying out the pieces of this scheme to influence the 2016 election. And we can tell you that as we recount why it was such a tough week for Trump, we also know, according to the public remarks here, we're working off the public evidence, we know we're near the end of this thing. We have now 2 witnesses left, according to the DA's team. The star witness, Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer and fixer, will begin Monday. 1 other witness, and then they say they'll be ready to rest as soon as the coming week. Cohen, of course, is central to the DA's case, and he has testified under oath before that Trump was in on everything.
Oh, he knew about everything. Everything had to go through Mr. Trump, and it had to be approved by Mr. Trump.
That's what Cohen sounded like last time. That is similarly legally binding testimony, and then it's under oath. A lot of punishment if you're caught messing up or outright lying and perjuring yourself. That was to Congress. So we expect to hear a similar line from Cohen when he takes the stand on Monday. Prosecutors say they'll rest their case, as I mentioned, by the end of the week. Now, that could change, but it's a confident line. It means if something unexpected doesn't happen or there's not some other, issue with the judge or something beyond their control, that they expect to have this thing done by Thursday. There are, of course, steps after that. The defense gets to respond and the jury gets to deliberate, closing arguments, that kind of stuff. But whether or not they can make the case, they are saying by Thursday, they believe they will have legally set out all of the evidence, every element of the 2 crimes they say Donald Trump committed. Now, this week started with a bang. You may recall Trump's team clashed with the judge over him getting caught blatantly violating the binding gag order. And that meant that even as this barrels forward, even as the DA only has a few days left, the judge had to tell him, the defendant through the lawyer, that he could face a jail sanction if this continues. Future violations can be punishable by incarceration. Now, prosecutors are making good on what they said they would do. Follow the money, show the receipts. And that's important, as we've mentioned, and we're going to get into this with our experts tonight as part of this special, that the witnesses matter because they bring everything to life. But they don't do much without receipts. And the DA does have some damning ones. The checks you see, the signature from the defendant, the other paperwork that shows how this was not just some random one-off, but was a whole plot run through the Trump organization and through Donald Trump's personal bank account. Now, they have the checks that Trump wrote to Cohen. The jury saw those for the first time this week. Prosecutors then called actress Stormy Daniels to the stand where she testified and told the jury why she understood Trump wanted her silenced at that time.
Stormy Daniels became a household name for shaking the corridors of power.
Daniels, of course, is at the center of this entire case.
Everybody wants to hear what Stormy Daniels will say.
Of course, Stormy Daniels getting the most attention.
Riveting, bombshell, sometimes icky testimony.
You wanted money. That phrase, repeated multiple times.
It bordered on, Susan Neckles, I think, shaming a sex worker.
I think that it is his motivation to really shame this woman, and it's not working.
She was not going to let, her story be mischaracterized.
Daniels testified over 2 days. Her testimony was quite detailed, at times graphic, and as an observation there, that could sound like a characterization or even an opinion. But when I say that it was detailed and graphic, that was something that the judge actually at times had to patrol. So at a legal level, some of the details went beyond what the judge felt was necessary for the evidence to support the DA's case. Remember, this is not like an interview where you can jump around on different topics. The questions and topics are regulated by the judge. Now, within what she did say, she testified that Trump didn't appear concerned when they had their initial encounter about it going public. That bolsters the DA's case that the only issue was the campaign motivation, part of the campaign crime, they say, and not just some generalized, hush money. Daniels faced aggressive questioning from Trump's attorney, who, as we've reported across the week, tried to also use stigmas or discredit her because of her job. She accused Daniels, for example, of extorting Trump. Daniels replied false. That was a kind of an allegation in the form of a question. She also raised the idea that maybe Daniels just made the whole thing up, which not only did she deny, but that would be a tough pill for the jury to swallow when they've seen so much other corroboration. That is to say that she had some interaction with Trump that made him so concerned about it, he was willing to pay for her silence, according to the receipts. Daniels also said that sharing her story has negatively impacted her, and there's a lot of corroboration of that. And when Daniels wrapped her testimony, it paved the way for other witnesses. And some of them are not as exciting, but they go, again, to what I said they have to prove. Not just this stuff happened, not just there was a cover-up, but that it was an intentional financial cover-up that Trump knew about, basically, at the time. So there was a bookkeeper from his company who said that Trump talked to his former and now convicted CFO, Weisselberg, daily. That testimony also backed up by another staff assistant who said on Thursday that they remembered a couple times where there was a question about a check, and Trump would just pick up the phone and call the now convicted CFO, Alan Weisselberg. She became emotional and cried on the stand. That's the second person to show that kind of emotion, and said she met with the defense earlier in the week to prepare. Now, she was a prosecution witness, but that gives you some signal of her perspective. And that's okay, by the way. The witnesses may have a mixed perspective. No matter who they're called by, their main obligation is supposed to be telling the truth, and the jury assesses that. Now, Friday, the judge even floated the idea of having the aforementioned convicted Trump money man, Weisselberg, testify himself. Now, that would be a big deal. Remember when I mentioned that some unexpected things could add time? If you added a witness and you had to arrange him getting out of Rikers jail, that might take a little extra time. He's in Rikers in New York after pleading guilty to perjury for testimony he gave in a different Trump case. Not this one, but a related fraud case, because the allegations of fraud have dogged Trump in different courtrooms. And that is the second time that Weisselberg has gone in to jail for things he did that were basically related to and arguably or allegedly at the behest of his boss, Donald Trump. Politico reports that at times Trump lawyers have looked visibly concerned at the suggestion there in court recently that Weisselberg come in. They seem to think that he's loyal, but better off not heard from. Now, we are also seeing the way that day by day this process can yield different information. So that staffer that I mentioned, when she testified Friday, she said Trump would sign checks sometimes without even reviewing them. And that goes to a clash among and across both witnesses in the DA and defense arguments. Because, again, the jury's job here is not to root for one side and not to only take the first thing they hear as gospel. Indeed, they will get instructions before they go in to deliberate that you have to take it all holistically, not just the most recent argument, be that which lawyer got to finish or which witness went last. And so together they have to kind of unspool all these claims. The busy out-of-the-loop Trump claim is a fair defense. It's one he's allowed to lodge. But they have to look at all the evidence, the hand signatures, the books, the bragging about how involved he is to decide whether or not that, plus a tape of him talking about these payments, whether that all checks out or not. You've heard me say this before. If we were using a general standard like two sources in journalism, they'd have Trump, the defendant, dead to rights. But it is a higher standard, and deliberately so. It's not just two sources or what you think is most likely or reasonably what happened. It is a very high standard on purpose for all defendants. It's supposed to be beyond a reasonable doubt that he did it, he covered it up, and he did it with the campaign crime intent. A higher bar, and that's why we're going to be watching this next week as well as the DA brings in Cohen and then rests its case. The trial is barreling forward. Trump's efforts to delay this, unlike every other case he's faced, in this courtroom, they have been failing.